The regular meeting of the State Board of Education is reconvened. Ms. Evans, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's public comment portion?
Yes, there are people who have registered to provide public comment today, and I will review the rules. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board, and I will monitor the time. We will strictly follow the time limit to ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. Please finish your sentence and conclude your comments when the timer expires. Thank you for your cooperation. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation segment of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for everyone. Anyone who disrespects another person, whether by name or in any other way, will be asked to stop. Public participation will take place both in person and online. We will begin with the individuals physically present today and then move to those in the queue online. First in the room today is William Lubaway.
That's correct.
Very good. As you come to the table and sit down, whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Okay, I have,
I'm-
under this area, I wouldn't get through my full presentation in 3 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 1 minute. Here's a handout. I'm a resident of Farmington, Michigan, and I moved into that school district 50 years ago, and it was an excellent school district, and today it's in the toilet. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, about 5 years ago, I recognized that there was a problem with the district, board squabbling and the like. And as I looked at it, I found that our reading proficiency score on the M-STEP was 56%. I said, wait a minute, what does that mean? And that means that we've abandoned or we're not paying attention to 44% of our kids. They're not going to be around when we talk about AI. If you can't read, how do you do AI? If you can't read, how do you become a good employee of a company? So what I did was I looked at Farmington as an example, and I extended my thoughts statewide and dug up what I think are some of the main problems. The biggest one is home rule, which you've already talked about a little bit today, which basically means that the State Board of Education and the Michigan Department of Education have really abandoned the 523 school districts and don't take any responsibility for their performance. And you say, but that's the way it's meant to be. Well, I say that's crazy. So what I have is, in my booklet, in the middle pages, page 8 and 9, I do have a little bit that I'd like to say is, I want to charge Michigan Department of Education to actually do something, or the legislature. And what I found in dealing with my Farmington School Board was they didn't understand what 56% meant. And so I said, well, let's convert it to letter grades, where an F. So what I want the state to do is, since that's common, letting the school districts not disclose their rates, or another way of saying it is lying about how their performance is any good, or it isn't any good. I would like to propose that the State Department of Education disclose to make every department or every school district, every school disclose what their letter grade for reading proficiency is, period. That will start to get the ball rolling on fixing this 44th ranked school district or in the state. And I have more in the book, which is what I put in the book. I have one book here for the superintendent. I'd like to pass it on to him. The Arsenal of Democracy. And the state of Michigan did an excellent job in World War II in saving us.
Thank you for your comment today. I'll make sure that he gets it. Thank you. Thanks. Next person in the room today is Heather Eckner. And board members, you'll see a packet from Autism Alliance at your seat. And so, Ms. Eckner, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you. you. Good afternoon, board members, superintendent, and department staff. My name is Heather Eckner, and I serve as the Director of Statewide Education for the Autism Alliance of Michigan. We appreciate the state's recent announcement celebrating Michigan's record high graduation rate. However, for many families of students with disabilities, this achievement does not feel like a shared one. Michigan's graduation rate tells two different stories. While 87% of students without disabilities graduate on time, only 62% of students with disabilities do. That is a persistent gap of 25 percentage points. That graduation gap has remained largely unchanged for years. Students with disabilities in Michigan are also dropping out at nearly twice the rate of their non-disabled peers, further underscoring the urgency of addressing these disparities. Michigan currently has one of the lowest graduation rates for students with disabilities in the nation, and one of the largest gaps between students with and without disabilities. When students with disabilities are graduating at lower rates and dropping out at higher rates, it is a clear signal that systemic barriers remain in place. At the same time, the number of students identified for special education services continues to grow, now reaching 15% of Michigan's public school population. These are only the students who have been identified. Families continue to report significant barriers in districts meeting their obligations under Child Find to locate and evaluate students who may need support. Taken together, these trends tell us something important. The system is not working as it should for students with disabilities. The data reinforce what families and educators have been saying for years. The Michigan Special Education Benchmark Report shows that Michigan is underserving students with disabilities across multiple measures, from identification to access to services to outcomes. Fortunately, the Michigan Special Education Reform Blueprint, Finance Reform Blueprint, offers a roadmap for addressing many of the structural issues that contribute to these disparities. That's why today's discussion about increasing graduation rates must include an intentional focus on students with disabilities. We respectfully urge the board and state leadership to take a few actions. First, establish aggressive multi-year goals designed to close the graduation gap between students with and without disabilities. Second, implement statewide early warning systems that identify students at risk of falling off of graduation track and connect them to timely and effective supports. And third, support the implementation of the Michigan Special Education Finance Reform Blueprint and work with stakeholders to address the structural barriers in funding, identification, and accountability that continue to limit outcomes for students with disabilities. Every student deserves the opportunity to graduate prepared for the most independent life possible. We look forward to working with you to help make this vision a reality. Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. Next in the room is Kristen Lee. Whenever you're ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Lee from Wayne County. I serve as the Michigan Education Director for Citizens Defending Freedom. Let me take us back to our foundations and why I think we're all here today. Our Michigan Constitution, Article 8, Section 1 states, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. This idea of good governance is echoed in Section 3 of our state constitution and also referred to in your bylaws, where it says leadership and general supervision over all public education is vested in the State Board of Education. It shall serve as the general planning and coordinating body for all public education. As a Michigan mom and taxpayer, as well as having been an English teacher, it's encouraging to see this board and the department, oops, I lost my feet, move in a wise and necessary direction, planning and coordinating reform in literacy education, thanks to the direction and accountability provided by the legislature in PA 146 and 147. May all these efforts, and especially those of our hardworking teachers, have exponential results in student success in learning to read and to love reading across our great state. On another matter of good governance and the leadership this board is elected to provide, I find it disappointing that a motion to just discuss a resolution to end gender identity teaching and transitioning in Michigan schools was voted down with claims of it being rehashing. The recently released Mirabelli versus Bonta Supreme Court opinion and the Department of Justice announcing investigations into 3 Michigan school districts necessitate conversation and action from this board. That's leadership and good governance. The Supreme Court affirmed a constitutional parental right to be informed when children socially transition or express gender nonconformity at school. Yet in professional development encouraged by the Department of Education under the previous superintendent, Michigan teachers have previously been taught that they are to keep this information from parents. This board absolutely needs to discuss this on record and pass a resolution clarifying your current position. I thank you in advance for putting it on the agenda for the next meeting. Furthermore, this board passed standards guidelines last fall that direct local school districts to align health curriculum required for graduation with standards that do include teaching reproductive health associated with gender identity, and then claim that because Michigan is a local control state, everything is okay. Creating confusion is not fulfilling your duty as a coordinating body. The Department of Justice is investigating 3 districts to determine whether they've included sexual orientation and gender ideology content in any classes, and if so, did they notify their parents of their right to opt out. This board needs to rescind the health standards guidelines passed in 2025 and provide truly clear standards and guidance for local districts and teacher preparation programs, local districts for curriculum selection that align with state and federal law. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter.
Thank you for your comment today. Welcome. Mike, are there any persons that have pre-registered for public comment online today?
Nobody is in the lobby.
Thank you. This concludes public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting, February 10th, 2026. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes of regular? Thank
February 12th, what day was it?
February 10th.
February 10th?
10th. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Dr. Pritchett, for second. Any discussion? Ms. Evans, take the vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Next, we have approval of the minutes of the Legislative Committee of March 5, 2026. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the Legislative Committee?
So moved.
Dr. Pritchett, thank you. Second. Ms. Lipton, thank you. Any
Discussion. Even though my iPad is away for technical issues, I did see that in the folder, the audio is now being provided, or maybe it always has been.
It's been 8 months, 9 months that it's been in there for every board meeting.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So
It's there.
available. Sound good?
All right. Ms. Evans?
Good. Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on the agenda is the annual evaluation of superintendent, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Pugh, please.
Thank you, Dr. Maleko. Per Dr. Maleko's contract, the State Board of Education conducts an annual evaluation prior to April 1st of each year. We went into closed session earlier today to discuss the superintendent's evaluation, and the board provided overall comments that were supportive of the superintendent's leadership. And I will begin, and if anyone wants to add on, please do. But we do, obviously, as stated, it was an awkward feel to be doing this evaluation after three months. But what we do agree on is the leadership that we have seen thus far, provided by Glenn Maleko, and the collaborative nature of Dr. Maleko, and hitting the ground running on an important subjects or issues that are facing us, like literacy, and collaborating with the governor's office and others to ensure that we are working with urgency to address literacy in our state. And we have continued to see our graduation rates climb, our AP rates climb, and we hope to continue to see that trajectory and are confident that we will see that under Dr. Maleko's leadership. And so for that reason, I will be putting forward, what I'll do is I'll put forward the motion for the annual evaluation resolution for State Board of Education meeting. And I
Second.
will, it's been seconded, and I will read that into, I'll read this, and then we will ask for discussion. Whereas the State Board of Education, consistent with its statutory oversight responsibilities and pursuant to the terms of the state superintendent's employment contract, conducted an evaluation of the state superintendent, Dr. Glenn Maleko, during the current evaluation period following the commencement of his contract term. And whereas the State Board of Education appreciates and recognizes Dr. Maleko's dedicated service and steadfast leadership of Michigan's public education system, and whereas the State Board of Education will extend the contract with Dr. Glenn Maleko by 1 year to December 7th, 2029, and whereas the contract dated December 8th, 2025, paragraph 21 shall be amended to read, beginning in 2026, the evaluation described in paragraph 20 shall be completed on or prior to April 1st of each year. And now therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education acknowledges the satisfactory evaluation in the public record and expresses its gratitude to Dr. Maleko for his continued dedication to the students, educators, and communities of the state of Michigan through his leadership of the Michigan Department of Education. And at this time, we will ask for discussion. Is there any discussion?
None. You the chair. Acknowledge.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. I'm sorry. Senator Bullock.
Not discussion, but more commentary. In just a short time, your contagious enthusiasm has touched us all, and so we look forward to that. And your passion for collaboration is what I'm looking for as we move forward, and that your slogan "Kids First" is really what we all strive to do. And so we're on countdown to next year when this evaluation. So see if we start to rise.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pugh.
Dr. Pritchett?
Thank you. No question that you hit the floor running when you started in December, though a superintendent's job is busy every month of the year. There does tend to be a little bit of a lull anyways during the summer months, but I appreciate the energy. We appreciate your focus on students. I am hearing from the field lots of positive. They appreciate the fact that you're willing to just about go anywhere, I think do go anywhere, in order to meet one-on-one or within groups to hear what the educators in Michigan are seeing, are experiencing with our students. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett.
Anyone else?
I would say that I do appreciate Dr. Maleko's aggressive attitude of getting out there into the field and his actions of getting out there into the field and listening to a large number of, across the board, and his positive attitude. It is a short period of time. In the past, probably the last 3 years, I think, Ms. Snyder and I have actually made motions to amend to remove or fire the superintendent. I have no intention of doing that, so I'd like to view that as a positive thing. However, I don't know, I don't think we have to add a year. I've always been uncomfortable adding a year, especially being in the minority. I've never. So, I'm going to pass just because it's a short time. I'm foregoing a motion to remove, and I look forward to next year and after we've had a full year of evaluation. So I'm not going to vote no. I'm not going to amend. I'm going to pass for now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McMillan.
Anyone else? Okay, we're ready for the vote.
Very good.
Oh, is that up?
Oh, no. I do agree. Your positivity is infectious, and the energy has shifted in the boardroom as well as in the department, and with the collaboration that you do with partners, and just really appreciate it. So thank you.
Ready? Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
Pass.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Snyder, and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I want to thank the state board for the evaluation, for working together, for the commentary earlier and today. And again, look forward to working with all of you. Positive collaboration as, you know, we all work together we got this, you know, put students first, right? So we will continue to do that and share in the word and do the work. So I'm really excited to work with everyone, the department, those in the field, parents, the legislature, the governor's office, Democrats, Republicans, whomever wants to help students, that's who we want to work with and, you know, make sure that we're making a difference and look forward to the challenges of working together so that we can do that. And we know we have some momentum, but we also have lots of areas for improvement, and we'll continue to work on that. And I'm very excited to work with my team at the department who has helped with all my onboarding at the state, and I'm still learning, and I want to thank Dr. Connell. All the acronyms, I got like a 22-page cheat sheet booklet of acronyms that are used, but she always redirects. But we got a great team here, and excited to work with all of them that are here in the leadership and all the staff members in the Michigan department. So thank you so much. Okay, next on the agenda is presentation on Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan, goal 5, increase the percentage of students that graduate high school, focusing on graduation. Today's presentation will provide updates aligned to goal 5 of Michigan's top 10 strategic plan, increase the percentage of all students who graduate from high school. The presentation will include 4-year, 5-year, 6-year graduation rates, demographic trends, state and local efforts. I want to welcome our presenters, Dr. Delsa Chapman, Deputy Superintendent, Division of Assessment, Improvement, and System Support. Dr. Renee Garcia, Interim Deputy Superintendent, Division of Educator Excellence, Career Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law. This is an informal presentation and no action is required by the board. I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Chapman and Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Dr. Maleko. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, board. It's good to be back at the table this afternoon, a little less rush than before lunch. As Dr. Maleko mentioned, we're here to share an update on Goal 5 of the Michigan Top 10 Strategic Education Plan, increase the percentage of all students who graduate from high school. This presentation has 3 parts. We will review the data for 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rates, share trends by student demographics, and conclude the presentation by sharing state and local efforts that are supportive of increasing graduation rates. We are excited to share that the 4-year graduation rate increased 1.2 percentage points to 84%. This is the highest 4-year graduation rate since Michigan began using the cohort methodology in 2007, 2008. The 5-year rates also improved, and the 5-year graduation rate is 85.8%, an increase of 1 percentage point. Additionally, you'll see in the coming slides, the 4-year graduation rates increased for 14 of 17 student groups.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, for teeing that up. As you can see here, Michigan's 4-year graduation rate has risen over the past 10 years. As Dr. Garcia indicated on the previous slide, the 84% is an all-time high since Michigan began the new cohort methodology. 2025 shows increases over the last years for the 4-year, 5-year, and the 6-year cohort graduation rates. We see even greater increases as we look at the growth in graduation rates of the 4, 5, and 6-year cohorts over the past 5 years from 2020 to 2025, with a near 2.0 percentage point increase for the 4-year cohort in particular. And again, as we look across the span of the past 10 years, we can see the growth in graduation rates across the 4, 5, and 6-year graduation cohort for all students. This is a great segue into now our student groups. Here on the screen, we have representation of our Asian student group. And as we look at that group, we see that there was a slight drop in the graduation rate for the 4 and 5-year cohorts, but there is a definite increase for the 6-year cohort for the 1-year change and steady gains over the past 5 and 10 years. For Black or African American student group data, we see increases across all graduation cohorts for the 4, 5, and 6-year cohorts. The same is true for Hispanic or Latino students, as we see increases across all cohorts for the 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year percentage point change. For Native American or Alaska Native, the student graduation dipped in the 4-year cohort, but the 5 and 6-year cohorts show growth. While the Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander student group shows a decrease for the 6-year cohort, the 4-year and 5-year cohorts show increases for the 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year trends. Students of 2 or more races show increases across the trend span for all 3 cohorts, with the highest gains in the graduation rate occurring for the 10-year time span, as noted on the screen. Here we see that the same is true for white students. And now moving into specialized population groups, we will start with our English learners. Other than the 4-year cohort 1-year percentage point change, rates for English learners in the 4, 5, and 6-year cohorts show steady increases across the board. For our economically disadvantaged students, this group shows steady increases in all cohorts and across the 1-year, 5-year, and 10 years in particular. Our graduation rates for youth experiencing foster care, while there are decreases for the 5 and 6-year cohorts, the rates for students experiencing foster care shows growth for the 1-year and 5-year percentage point change for the 4-year cohort in particular. This would be the most recent cohort, and due to both internal and external efforts of support, we are looking to see increased percentage point changes in the years to come for this student group. For youth experiencing homelessness, the grad rates for youth experiencing homelessness shows an increase for all 3 cohorts over the 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year time span. And again, due to both internal and external efforts of support, we continue to see increases for this particular student group. Regarding students with disabilities, in Michigan, graduation outcomes for students with disabilities continue to show steady and meaningful improvement over time. As we see here noted on the screen, the four-year cohort graduation rate has increased by 5 percentage points over the past decade, with continued gains in the most recent year, signaling progress and supporting students to graduate in their original cohort. Similarly, the 5-year and 6-year cohort rate has also risen, demonstrating the importance for this group in particular, flexible pathways and extended time options for students who need additional support to meet graduation rates. So as we come to a conclusion with our student groups, it's important to share the following. These trends reflect the positive impact of intentional systems at both the state and local levels. Moving forward, it is definitely our intent to provide sustained focus on high quality instruction along with associated high quality materials, early intervention, and data driven decision making that will be critical for assisting our students to accelerating outcomes and ensuring all students of all groups are prepared for post-secondary success. And now, Dr. Garcia will share a summary.
This summary slide shows 17 categories of students that Dr. Chapman just reviewed and notes with an asterisk the 14 categories that had higher graduation rates in 2025 than they were in 2024.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And now we'll move into the efforts. What are the efforts that have proven to help with the increased trends of graduation rates? We will start with reminding and sharing with the board again, EWIMS, or the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System. We know that it is a research and evidence-based 7-step process involving data-driven decisions to provide support and intervention to steer students towards student success. With intentional statewide support, MDE provides 20 EWIMS coaches who provide training and overall support to schools and districts across the state. Additionally, we have put forward some intentional efforts to support and assist our schools that have been identified for comprehensive support and intervention through our school index accountability system. The Office of Educational Supports in particular is providing training or funding training to assist those schools, and those schools were identified in November of 2025. These services provided through the Office of Educational Supports through MDE are free to schools and will start soon here in the spring of 2026. Dr. Garcia will share an additional effort that is showing success as well.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Another effort that helps to improve graduation rates is the use of personal curriculum. A personal curriculum is a tool to modify the Michigan Merit Curriculum by individualizing the state graduation requirements. Personal curriculum resources and guidance are available to all districts and can include in-person professional development to support implementation. Over the last year, the Office of Educational Support's personal curriculum consultant, a position that now resides within the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, has provided 66 trainings to ISDs, 76 trainings to local districts, and 27 trainings to outside agencies. For all students, including students with disabilities, a personal curriculum may modify the Michigan Merit Curriculum course content based on the individual needs of the student in accordance with the statute. A personal curriculum may also reduce the number of credits required under the Michigan Merit Curriculum to graduate. The modification must be done as a function of the student's personal curriculum team at school. And credit modification must be consistent with the student's post-school goals. This slide shows a statewide summary of students with a personal curriculum over the last 8 years. As you can see, there's an overall trend in the number of students with a personal curriculum, the percentage of students with a personal curriculum, and the number of students who graduated with a personal curriculum, all increasing. The department has created guidance to support increasing graduation rates. Volume 1 of the graduation rate guidance is focused on high school and was released in November of 2022. This guidance addresses absenteeism intervention, academic enrichment, and tutorial support, extracurricular engagement, and mentoring. Volume 2 is focused on middle school and was released in February of 2024. This guidance addresses strategies to promote attendance, personalized learning, mentoring, and out-of-school time learning. Volume 3 focuses on elementary school and was released this past December. This guidance addresses systemic approaches for a solid foundation, creating welcoming environments for students, families, and community members, and fostering healthy students and relationships. Additionally, MDE has partnered with the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, also known as LEO, to create an information packet in accordance with Public Act 88 of 2022. The image on this slide shows the resources page of LEO's Pathfinder tool. The link on this slide is a great place to learn more about post-graduation opportunities. As you can see from this slide, we continue to see growth in Pathfinder's visitors and roadmap completers. In summary, the statewide four-year graduation rate increased to 84%, the highest four-year graduation rate since Michigan began using the federal cohort methodology in 2007-2008. Statewide graduation rates increased in 14 of the 17 student group categories since 2024, and state and local efforts continue to expand with the early warning intervention and monitoring system, Michigan Merit, curriculum flexibilities, including personal curriculum, and the guidance provided by MDE to schools to increase graduation rates. Thank you for letting us share this great news. Back to you, Dr. Maleko.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the high-quality presentation. It's great to see the progress, and still, we're recognizing where we need to make improvements. Is there any board members? Dr. Pugh?
Thank you for the presentation and delivering great news again. Just a couple of questions that I'm formulating in my head. One, just to begin with, can you explain again the cohorts and how, like, the methodology behind the data collection and computing?
Sure. So in terms of 4, 5, and 6 year, the 4-year cohort, Dr. Pugh, would be that student who enters high school in ninth grade, and he or she is successful in completing in that 4-year time period.
Okay.
So they're graduating with their cohort.
Okay.
Life happens, things happen, and there needs to be adjustments. And so within Michigan, our calculation, which is approved by US Said, we are able, when students strive to stay on track and to graduate, they can stay in high school and then are assigned to what is called a 5-year if they're doing an extra year. And then some, if they took time off and came back and are able to enroll, they then are part of the 6-year cohort. And so the methodology in partnership and working with CEPI, so that the data calculations are aligned with what is required federally. It's about the formula and how we assign the students according to where they are from the beginning of the time frame they start high school and progress through.
Okay, so just clear, because it's not who entered the senior year and exited the senior year. Okay, and I've asked this question before as well. The correlation with the increase in the rigor that students are getting while in school. I'm speaking specifically maybe to the last presentation that we had, which was on advanced placement. We had
Okay.
a conversation. And I think if we're talking about that, we're seeing increase in the rigor, in the coursework that students are taking, as well as those completers who are finishing strong with strong results, and the increase in graduation rates. And can you help us with those correlations, or am I just thinking that in my head? And you know the reason why I'm asking, because there's a thought that that there are schools that are just graduating students, but we're also reporting the good news of the rigor, advanced placement being one of those examples.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh, for the question. So when we think about Michigan's Strategic Education Plan Goal 4, where we are expanding learning opportunities for students, when students are given the opportunity, as we saw this morning with the students
Right.
that presented, when we have flexible options and options that are engaging to the students, we are seeing them staying in school. Hence, we have lowered our dropout rate because the students are engaged. That engagement, yes, involves those opportunities such as advanced placement, early middle college, dual enrollment. And those opportunities in particular have set a path where students are actually earning credit in high school for college. Hence, I want to finish high school so that I can matriculate onto college. So it's a combination of efforts and opportunities where we are seeing the continuous gains of graduation rates here in Michigan.
And I appreciate that response, Dr. Chapman, because my last question, with the presentation with Alex and Mr. Rousert, was thinking about my experience in the gifted program. And so when we were talking about the alternative school, and then as we speak here about the individualized plans, as Board Member McMillan discussed, are we thinking about all of those opportunities as well? Because when I was hearing the experience of the alternative schools, it was very similar to gifted schools, my experience, and those that I hear other parents speak of, and the special education. I mean, I think that it's really, they all fit to me under special education and or individualized plans. Is that what we're talking about when we speak to um, the broad spectrum of individualized learning opportunities?
So again, when we think about opportunity and the fact that we are a local control state, we do encourage our local education agencies to tap in to make sure that we're offering programming and opportunities that engage all learners. So to your point, aside to the alternative pathway, are we considering options for the advanced children? And so MDE has had an opportunity to collaborate with advocacy groups. There is not a formalized acceleration program through the department, but we do offer resources and guidance to our local education agencies that want to, at that level, put forward that type of opportunity for their students.
And just finally with your explanation, I mean, I guess my thought is that we stigmatize, whether we're talking about gifted, or whether we're talking about special education, or whether we're talking about alternative schools, but really those are, in addition to advanced placement, early college, whatever it may be, those are just all opportunities for children to find their own path to success. And that just is really pressing right now for me, especially after hearing the presentation earlier.
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, I wanted to also connect it with Mr. Rosser's very compelling presentation with the three graduates, or two graduates and one. So one of the gentlemen, and I'm perfectly fine with this if the answer is yes, one of the gentlemen said, I was entering my junior year with only 3 credits. And so I was like, how did this happen? And he said he graduated with his cohort. And so would he have probably had a personal curriculum that allows him to graduate with less than, because, you know, when I graduated, I had to have a half credit of social studies. That was it. I mean, there was no you know, and we all did fine, or most of us did. So, you know, we weren't being dumbed down or anything like that. So, again, if the answer is yes, do you think that was probably how, I mean, maybe but a student this is what a personal curriculum could be used for, is, you know, if they don't think they're gonna get check all the boxes, 4 years of this and that they could get a personal curriculum that's tailored to them and graduate, even though they're not getting all the credits.
So that's an excellent question, Mr. It's an excellent question, and it definitely aligns with what was shared this morning. So in addition to the personal curriculum, when a student is identified, and hopefully through EWIMS, that they are in that situation, there also is the option to test out. You can couple that with the personal curriculum. And as Dr. Garcia shared, within that personal curriculum, it's not that we are watering down or dumbing down the expectation. It's presented, a program is developed and presented to the student to accomplish over a period of time.
Right.
So for some students, that also would include some online learning, some learning during unscheduled regular school time, such as during the summer. So it's a full package. And again, tailoring to the need of the student to make sure that that personal curriculum is still going to meet what's required through the Michigan Merit curriculum.
And when they have a personal curriculum, does the parent sign off on that, or a guardian? Do they sign off and say, we're fine with this?
That is in statute.
Okay.
They have
Okay,
to
good,
sign
because
off.
I could see some people saying, well, the district, you know, they want to not count this kid against them for, you know, they're not going to graduate normally, let's shove them into this, but, you know, and I don't think that happens hardly at all, but I just want to make sure that the parent's okay with this. They're not, if the parent says, you know what, I think Susie can buckle down and make it without, you know, dropping all these other things, you know, then there'd be a back and forth. What's best for Susie? That would be the discussion at that point. And, okay, good. And one last thing, you know, the alternative pathways, like what Mr. Rosser was talking about, he mentioned that schools of choice brings kids in. And I just wonder, you know, a district would lose $10,000 or something, but if it's best for that student to go to a district that has a good alternative program, I hope that the district would say, it's okay. You know, the neighboring district is accepting schools of choice and students, and we don't have that resource here. You know, I just hope that would happen. I don't need any, I'm not asking for any comments. I just, thinking out loud, you know, I would imagine there are places where, you know, it's known that this district that's nearby has a really good one, and maybe they're looking out for the best of the kid, even if it costs them a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lipton?
Thank you so much. This really is great news. And so I just want to applaud the department, and really it's very, very, very commendable that we're at this point. So it's very exciting. I just have a couple of questions. So on slide number 22, where we talk about goal 5 efforts, and we talk about EWIMS, we talked about the department has 20 EWIMS coaches available to provide training and implementation. Let's dream for a moment. Is that enough? You know, I understand that there's always, you know, funding constraints, but we could just dream for a moment. We do have over 500 school districts, and if you add in charter school districts, it comes up to 800. Is that enough? And where would we like to be in a perfect world?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Lipton. So the 20 coaches that we have now, they are spreading the wealth, if you will, across the state. And so it's more so of like a trainer model. So when they are training either a single or a group of districts, many times these trainings are also filtered through the ISD, where there are a consortium of districts involved. And so we are able to share that information, that professional learning, not district by district, but more so on a regional level. If we had more coaches, yes, then we might be able to have more that are dedicated to a particular district, if it's a very large district, if you will. But right now, we have embraced what we have, and we are moving it forward, and it is working. It's working well. Um, so this we would welcome the opportunity to have more, but right now we have a model that we are seeing the definite benefits of.
Thank you for that. I think the trainer model is great. And given, I'm sure, financial constraints. But I do think that it is important for us around the table to understand that education does require resources, and particularly um, excellence in education that does require resources. And the EWIMS model, I think, is really, really important because it really emphasizes early warning, when we can actually do something and intervene, which I think is so important. It's heartbreaking in the work that I do at the Promise Zones to talk to an 11th and 12th grade student and family and say, I wish I had known that I needed to do thus and such. Boy, I would have liked to have known that certainly by upper elementary or middle school. So the early warning model is really, really important, and I commend the department for really embracing that, to do the work that you do. One of the things I wanted to ask, in terms of slide number 20, where we're talking about 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rates for students with disabilities. And I'm very heartened to see the numbers increasing. One question I have is, do we know what graduation rates for students with disabilities in other states looks like? Or if not, do we have an idea of where we want to be? 65.7% for the 6-year graduation rate for 2025. Is that, are there things that we could do or look at to move the needle on that? Or is that something that we want to tackle specifically? I mean, like I said, I'm very encouraged with the growth. But are there systemic changes we can be looking at to sort of jumpstart that or tackle that? Or is that where we should be?
You want to answer that? Okay.
I'll jump in and then
Okay. All right.
please feel
Yep.
free to join me.
Mhm.
So it is not where we would like it to be. We'd absolutely like it to be higher, and we are working on those efforts. One of the personal curriculum is one example, right? But we have a number of efforts working with our ISDs to try to increase those graduation rates. So it is, we want every child in Michigan to have the advantage of a graduation. So we will continue to strive for that.
So a question that I have is, how does the personal curriculum interact with the IEP team meeting? In other words, would the personal curriculum be potentially a component of the student's IEP?
Yes, if the student has an IEP, then the personal curriculum, it's within the law that the personal curriculum works with the IEP team.
Okay, so it interacts. And then one thing that I just wanted to make sure that I understand. So I think EWIMS is an amazing system. And I love the embracing of that by the department. Does the EWIMS model my understanding is that it is more in terms of looking at a school district that might be in need of assistance and help? Or is it actually triggered on a student-by-student level? In other words, can it be used to, at a very early step, look at a student, maybe even, I don't know, at the elementary level, that might be in need of services, only because, in my experience, sometimes families, I don't want to, there may be, at least I've observed some denial sometimes, or just sort of wanting to sort of wait and see how the child progresses. And there's oftentimes pushback when the school district may be advocating for some special ed services, and there's maybe a disconnect in terms of getting some of those services to the student at an early point.
Sure. So while EWIMS, in its at its inception was very specific to the secondary students, so we are intervening and making sure they are on the right path for graduation.
Okay.
That model is now becoming more of a strategic element when we think about what's occurring in our middle years and our elementary schools. At the elementary level that you very specifically pointed out, Ms. Lipton, we do have schools across the state that have implemented PBIS, or positive behavior intervention support, but that's also coupled with supporting our early learners with academic interventions and supports also.
Because it's all interconnected. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you. I had a couple comments too. When you're looking at alternative, I know we had one at the local level, and it does make a difference for those students. I think what we saw this morning was personal relationships are also very important, and I think it was recognized with Mr. Rosser, and the students kept bringing up the teachers that had an impact. EWIMS, and I think you pointed out, Mr. McMillan, the EWIMS I was also involved with. I think it's a great program. They had us present, at the local level, we had 95% graduation rates and 73% college admission. It was all those opportunities. But it wasn't so much about, we see the data on early college, AP and all that, and it's more likely for kids to get into college and graduate. But the other thing, and if we had more funding, I'd love to see something like what we did with, and we presented on a national level, called the graduation intervention model. And we presented before the EWIMS, and what it was is that you have a counselor that's actually designated for a specific task to track students and to find out when they're immediately off track to graduation, to develop relationships with the families if needed, find out if they're not coming to school, and then work through the process to try to get them back on track towards that graduation. We had a lot of success with it. I know EWIMS was very excited about it. And so these are some areas that if I had to say what we did, we invested in those with our general fund dollars, but it's limited. But these are kind of programs I think that EWIMS is bringing in to promote. And so if we could, promote that even more, I think it would be really positive. I think the other thing I just want to comment, and again, appreciate the presentation here. When I was interviewing before you all, I said, special education being a concern, and we did some work with co-teaching. And when you get to that graduation rate, when they're on a certificate of completion, it doesn't count towards their graduation as well. So that's just something to consider. I can tell you that this is an area we need to work on. I believe we're going to have a presentation on special ed coming up in a few months. And I have asked the special ed team to provide me with a plan of action to increase graduation rates. So more to come on that, but we'd be happy at some point to share that. But, again, focusing on special education, we know it's an issue. We have to work together and to help those students. But there is positive data within there. We need to keep the momentum going forward. And although I can't take credit on a state level, I can say back in Dearborn, I helped that rate with our higher numbers, at the local and working together. So I think, we got to all work together, and I think we can do it. And, I think there's a lot of, everybody knows that we need to make that difference for the special ed students along with the general ed. So we need to continue that mission and put all students first. So thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. McMillan.
Yeah, since we're 50 minutes ahead, I thought I'd just chime in one last time, one last
Absolutely.
bite of the apple. First, a correction. When I graduated, you had a half credit of civics, not social studies. Second, Mr. Rosser also brought up that two-letter word, or two, I guess, AI. And so when we're looking at personal curriculum, it does seem to me that, one of the impediments to really blowing open and exploding personal curriculum, which seems like it would be a good thing to me potentially, is just it's difficult to figure out each person. You got to, it's individualized. And so it just takes more time probably for each district to have to figure this out and see what their resources are. But I think with AI, maybe you say, okay, given our resources, and this is where this child is at, in 10th grade or whatever, what are some options? What are the best? And I think that could be done rapidly now. I mean, I think maybe utilizing AI in the positive areas could be, given what we are as a district and where this child is, what are the reasonable options that could be done? I bet it could kick it out in a minute, and I think that you could all of a sudden have a menu of options for the student and the parent to choose from and say, yeah, this is the best way. And I don't think it would go, and I hope it wouldn't go towards, put them on a computer and that's how we individualize things. But, I'm hoping we're moving in that direction of fully utilizing AI to its best potential in these kind of areas. I think it could really, and more personal curriculum would probably increase graduation rates substantially. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Okay, well, we appreciate the presentation. Great job.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is presentation and recommendation for approval of the proposed standards for the preparation of teachers of visual arts. During today's presentation, you will hear the proposal for the revision of the standards for teacher preparation of visual arts. Dr. Renee Garcia, Interim Deputy Superintendent, Division of Educator Excellence, Career Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law. Just stay right there. I think you've been here how many times today? All right, you're getting used to that hot seat over there.
Yeah.
Ms. Kelly Brzezinski, Director, Office of Educator Excellence. Welcome back again. Mr. Sean Kotke, Assistant Director, or Doctor, excuse me. I said Mr., I apologize. Of Office of Educator Excellence. Dr. Gina Garner, Higher Education Consultant, Office of Educator Excellence. And Ms. Tricia Shana Martinez, Middle School Visual Arts. Oh, and yeah, she was on the list but not able, so I know you'll explain that her involvement. She wasn't able to make it. Following this presentation, you will be asked to approve the updated standards for the preparation of teachers of visual arts. I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon again, and thank you again, Dr. Maleko. Board, we are here for this presentation, as Dr. Maleko said, of the proposed standards for the preparation of teachers of visual arts. So I just want to remind everyone of that. And I'm happy to hand over the presentation to Director Brzezinski to get us started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today. We were really excited that Ms. Tricia Shanae Martinez was going to be joining us. Unfortunately, she did have a last-minute unavoidable situation where she was not able to be here. But what she did do was provide us with some of the artwork from her students so that we can really see the impact of this type of work and how it plays into the students in the field and making sure that we are putting students first. So we're excited as we get through this presentation to be able to share that with you. And to kick us off, I will hand it over to Dr. Kaki.
Great, thank you. So again, we bring to you the new standards for preparation of teachers of visual arts. And the first question is always why. First, our current standards for the preparation of teachers of visual arts education were approved by the State Board in 2001. They are quite outdated, as you might imagine. And this is part of the extension of our certification structure revision work into PK-12 endorsement areas, areas that cover multiple grade bands rather than just the individual ones. There have been recent national visual arts standards, so when those happen, or when those come into play, we seek to realign our standards as closely as possible. And again, speaking about how things are outdated, we needed to add a modern emphasis on digital literacy and access in digital artwork. This work fits primarily within Goal 7 to increase the number of certified teachers in areas of shortage. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Garner to talk about the process and our public comment.
Thank you so very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So who participated in this standards revision process? We gathered stakeholders across the state. We worked with our preparation providers to try to recruit mentors. We brought in art educators from all over the state who had previously connected with us and volunteered. We had varied school and geographic contexts represented by these stakeholders. There were people with administrator backgrounds, and then we had educator preparation faculty who teach in our art preparation programs be a part of this. And we wanted to make sure we were across large and medium public as well as small private. So, overview of the standards. The standards are generally couched in two pieces. One is categories of practice, and these are things that all art teachers are doing in their classroom through their pedagogy. It's practices that impact those community and school connections, this fluidity of technological change and being able to be fluid in technological change, new pedagogical practices in student learning that we've learned since 2001 when those previous standards were approved, as well as these practitioner mindsets that are learner-centered, and that really frames within our certificate structure revision. Additionally, really that understanding how to take your knowledge into practical use, and as Sean mentioned, this really critical piece of engaging and interpreting visual media and understanding the consumption and the effects of visual media. Our stakeholders really felt strongly about that piece. These categories of practice are then organized into our 5 domains of curriculum and design, core content, learner-centered practice, growth in professional practice, and then creating those community and building external and internal relationships. So some of the changes that we saw with these standards, if you see the first column talks about, the current standards created in 2001, they had some content, but a lot of it was focused on structures of a preparation program. Like, what are the credit requirements? What are the faculty competencies? What kind of art processes are you talking about? What kind of program facilities do you have? And there wasn't as much focus on accessibility and pedagogy as much as it's explicit, like this is sculpture and this is painting and this is, these other pieces. So our stakeholders really wanted to pull pedagogy into these standards and deeply embed pedagogy into these standards by focusing on how do you design curriculum? How do you implement that curriculum and reflect upon the teaching and assess your practice? How would you have a mindset that promotes access to learning and really focuses on that learner-centered teaching and learner-centered pedagogy? How are you looking at, instead of just these explicit art frames, but how are you looking at it all as design and practice? And then how are they interacting with and consuming visual media? Because we know children are consuming visual media these days. The other 2 shifts really come with the certificate structure. So the current programs had been working on that 12 weeks of student teaching and some professional preparation minimally embedded. But with our new certificate structure, all of our programs now require a minimum of 600 hours working with children before you can be recommended, minimum of 600 hours, before you can be recommended for a certificate. And additionally, we have PK-12 professional knowledge and skills standards. Those also are learner-centered pedagogy, assessment of learning, assessment of teaching, really looking at and working with engagement with students to be able to have that classroom engaged in the work that you're doing. So our public comment results. We released this for public comment after the last board meeting. It was available for 6 weeks. And then we pulled our stakeholders back together to review public comment. We had 27 survey participants. They represented 16 counties, 18 school districts or ISDs, 3 of our universities, and 8 professional education organizations. And you'll see by the map, most of them were in Michigan. We did have a respondent in the UP, and we had a respondent from North Carolina. So not sure, maybe that was somebody on a conference or something. But we were amused by that. So you'll notice that the majority of our respondents are current K-12 art educators. We also had classroom teachers. They could choose all roles that applied. So, but still, the majority of them really noted they were art educators. And you also notice that the majority of our respondents have 10 plus years in education. So they brought that field of experience with them in the comments they provided us. For the indicating your position on the proposed standards, we had the majority of individuals with 73% giving some kind of support, the support or support with minor revisions. We had some that would support with significant revisions, and we did receive specific revision notes that the stakeholder group did consider and take some of them. And then we had 13% neutral. I will point out that we do have an against, and there were 0 votes against in that. In terms of what extent did they feel the standards really align with these national art education standards and preparation for art educators, the majority, again, thought they did mostly and very well, and then only 19% felt those were partial. Also, whether these standards will allow our visual arts teachers to support PK-12 learner enrichment and creative growth. The majority, again, noted yes, mostly and very well. A little bit more on the partially, but those also came with revision comments that the committee considered. And then finally, academic achievement was, again, in the 80s in terms of mostly and very well, with a 14% partially. We know our art educators do support K-12 student learning in other core content areas. We had open-ended comments as well, where individuals can provide us comments both overall and aligned to each of the standards components. We had 16 of our individuals commenting, leaving 51 total comments. Most of the comments were positive. We had a small portion of them that gave us very explicit, you should change this word to this. In this line, you should consider adding this. And a very minute portion were negative. Some of the major themes in our public comment. There was a lot of concern because these are beefed up standards. These have a lot more in them. And there was a concern from our educators that that would affect their workload. So a lot of times, and we get this with standards for teacher preparation, that they think that, you know, all of these things are going to add to their workload when really it's a workload for our educator preparation faculty. And so some of them were like, this is a lot and this is a lot to learn. So that was kind of a piece of what they said. There was also a concern about technology because technology has been weaved throughout these standards for reasons. We know that technology is a critical part of what's happening in children's lives. We know that technology plays a part in art, especially. And our art teachers were worried that we would lose that physical nature of art if we focus too much on technology. But the committee really looked through those technology standards and believed that these standards really promote both that physical aspect of art, but also how are you working with technology and how are you interpreting this visual media that we're getting. Additionally, Because we went more into the pedagogy, we weren't explicitly naming sculpture and pottery and all of these specific art areas. That was a bit of a concern for our art teachers who have been working in the field for years doing the thing that they're doing. Other comments are, this is what should be taught in college courses, which the standards don't do. The colleges decide how to interpret those. And then there was a lot of support for our teachers getting management skills, assessment skills, data literacy skills. Those are both built into these standards and with the accompanying PK-12 professional knowledge and skills. Anyone coming out of these new programs will have very solid professional knowledge and skills instruction. So the committee responds to the themes, again, they felt technology is critical for art education in today's world. Its inclusion did not take away from the ability for students to be able to also do core areas of art expression. We also, noted that the visual arts teachers will be completing these professional knowledge and skills programs. So the pieces we know are critical, the classroom management, classroom engagement pieces, understanding assessment, understanding how that data literacy teaches you, being a reflective teacher, and really being able to provide that learner-centered pedagogy. Those are all embedded in the standards anyone in these programs will receive. And also, again, we say what they have to provide, but we don't say how those preparation programs must provide it. That really is up to each individual institution and the faculty that they have. However, we do approve those programs based on the standards. So we do get another look at what they're doing. Here's a sample revision. The board did receive a red line copy of our revisions, but a couple of samples of what we did. One, and these were all from very specific comments that gave us explicit revisions. One was that somebody noted that, that teaching framework, we did not talk about aligning teaching with the state and national standards. So we added that piece in it. Another one for a descriptive clarification, somebody pointed out that celebrating local and global art and design is not very in-depth. And so we changed it to highlighting and interacting with, so that there's this more in-depth connection with both global and local art. And another one was implementing classroom procedures for using technology. And we know that technology piece, we need to be responsible and ethical about technology use. So we added those words in to really clarify. We want to make sure they have responsible and ethical practices when they're working with technology in the classroom. So our next steps, if the board approves these standards, we will start MTTC development because we will have a new test that is directly aligned to these new standards. We will start working with our programs to help them start developing programs based on the new standards, and then they will start applying. Our anticipation is that sometime, I would say not fall 2027, but probably closer to like fall 28, spring 29 is when we might start seeing new graduates come out of these programs and join our teaching workforce. Yes. Okay, and we have a gallery walk. Sorry, I was pulling up my notes. Our colleague Tricia, who is one of our committee members, wasn't able to join us today, but what she did is put together a gallery walk of art from her students. And we wanted to share that with you today, just really kind of bring home the students who are doing this work. Go ahead. Yeah. She did note that these are notes from her. There is a literacy initiative in our district to improve the lower elementary reading scores. I took it upon myself to continue my research work and include books that coincide with our art lessons. And she also noted that she's writing a book for art educators currently. For the lower elementary artwork, they used Mixed Up Chameleon and House for Hermit Crab by Eric Carle. And they also used Giraffes Can't Dance by Giles Andre. And so that's these two and then those. And those. And you can see the Eric Carle in there. And then for the middle school artwork in achieving visual art milestones, they have focused on portraiture, 3D construction through clay, stained glass effects with tempera, and watercolor, and cultural exposure to other artistic cultures such as origami.
That. And we have these.
I like the frog in particular.
Yeah. Yes.
That was her.
There we go.
Thank you for your
Very well.
time
Thank you.
today. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions from the board? Mr. McMillan?
So the responses were through the that you have for public comment getting. Did you get any emails?
We did not. We did not
Okay.
receive public comment emails.
And I noticed there weren't any included. I just imagined that just the department was happy with the replies through the main system, so they didn't need any emails. So are we talking about, just to put this in perspective, this is only art teachers?
Correct.
Okay, not anything adjacent to arts or technology teachers that, they're, okay, art. And so can a local district hire somebody to be an art teacher without being certified?
If they use a permit.
What's that?
If they use a permit. They have to have a Michigan-issued credential, but they could hire somebody on a permit in order to have a temporary placement.
And
You
how
do have
hard
to
is
be
it
a
to get the
certified-
permit?
So law requires somebody to have 60 credits in order to teach or as a substitute teacher.
60 credits at
60 college credits
a teaching college?
at an accredited college or university. That's the minimum requirement to be a substitute teacher. To be hired as an art teacher, you have to hold a credential. The ideal credential would be this endorsement. The alternative could be a substitute permit.
So if they don't meet the 600 hours, they still could be able to teach art. They just wouldn't be able to be a permanent art teacher. They'd have to go through a permit, and that may be tenuous year to year, semester to semester. Okay. So yeah, the 600 hours. Okay, no, I guess those are, when you said the workload was going to be mainly on the teacher prep programs, you're saying that, so if there's a current art teacher that is certified, will they need to go back to college, and are they grandfathered in or something, or?
All current art education endorsements, because we've had varied ones in the past, those are all still valid and will remain valid for the lifetime of that certificate.
So when you said that the workload would be on the teacher prep programs, if I heard you right.
Yes, you did.
That's saying that kids or students coming in as freshmen need to be, their program may need to be revamped a little bit? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, so the standards present opportunities for our preparation faculty to revise their programs. So the work that's presented in these standards is really on those faculty to revise standards and align their programs. The students coming in, they don't have to deal with the standards. They simply complete the coursework. It's up to the faculty to do all of the revision based on the standards.
Do a good job doing the revision. Do their students not pass some certification test, potentially?
We would not approve them until they do a good job. So we work with them until we get to a yes. We have our, they apply. They apply for the program, they give us their alignment to standards, and then we review assessments, and we do that with our partners. So our content experts, such as our stakeholders in the standards group, are the ones that will look at those applications and assure that they are aligning to the standards and really addressing fully the standards that are expected.
Higher ed college says, I appreciate the standards, but we think these are even better.
Then they would not be approved to recommend for an art certificate or an art endorsement.
But just this whole uniformity thing just kind of gets me. I mean, if somebody says, you know what, this specialty college does things way better, they say the state has, their standards are okay, but, we've got, and a district wants to hire somebody from this whatever college, because we think that they're best, and give them the certificate. I just think that should, I don't like the whole, and especially with, even art is probably gonna be changing so rapidly. I mean, yeah, I know you said 2001, but I mean, the world is changing so rapidly with technology, and I know art, a lot of it shouldn't be AI or technology driven, but who knows how things are heading, that it's just, I don't know, it's just an institutional clunkiness that that I don't really appreciate. I have a different philosophy in some of this stuff, so thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, could I get a motion to approve the standards for the preparation of teachers of visual arts? Dr.
moved.
Pritchett, thank you. Second, Ms. Lipton. Any?
Other question?
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed that there were 14% or certain percent that said that they would support it with significant revisions. Were any significant revisions that you can recall rejected, and what would that look like?
What was interesting is when people noted significant revisions, some of those people did not give us suggestions at all. They just said significant revisions. But those who did give us suggestions, I would say the majority of the revisions that were explicit were accepted by the committee. The ones that were not were more along the lines of there's too much technology or there's not enough painting mentioned. Those are the ones the committee said, but those explicit ones, they were all deeply considered and usually accepted.
Dr. Pugh?
Sorry, but the sample size was 27. Is that what was expected? It sounds low.
Visual arts is a really small area. That's one of our lowest numbers of teachers when you compare to science or ELA or math or even music. So we would expect there to be a lower number of respondents just due to the interest in it. But we also were able to target some feedback and allow people some anonymous opportunities to provide information. And so that's not reflected in the survey, but it was reflected in the development of the standards themselves.
And it wasn't all teachers though, right? So, but it was just, okay.
Not all teachers. It was
Okay.
a broad.
In our messaging for the public comment period, I think was more robust for this than for perhaps any other standards. We had both a memo on Thursday, a press release that announced it, and then every Thursday during the period of it that it was out, it was in our other important information to solicit. Plus, we had direct solicitations to our professional organizations to please respond to the survey within this timeline. So,
But this was about the sample size that you were expecting? Okay.
Based on other standards, that's about what we would have expected.
yeah.
What other,
Mr. McMillan, go ahead.
was there, I saw the 38 stakeholders that created these or helped create them. I didn't notice like artists, or I don't know, or maybe even maybe education prep, art history, I don't know, just kind of like classical artists or anything like that. There's nothing like that would have been on there?
We use a pretty standard classification for the survey responses around what roles are there. So somebody may have contributed with that perspective, but it wasn't.
38 stakeholders that.
Yes, I actually can speak to that. Each of our stakeholders who were in the primary writing team each had their own art. They all had a respective art form that they practiced, that they actually shared with us at times. So, and that actually became prominent in the standards, that art teachers should have an art form that they're well versed in. So each of those participants did have an art form they're versed in.
Right. I just meant like a professional artist, like a few from DIA. I mean, just or people that are associated with certain institutions that might have contributed to what beautiful. I know art is in the eye of the beholder, but I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other? Okay, Ms. Evans, take the vote, please.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
No.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Snyder,
No.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the great presentation. Let's give them. And next, we have report of the State Board President, Dr. Pugh.
In addition to this being Literacy Month or Reading Month, March is also Women's History Month, a time to recognize the women who have shaped our communities, strengthened our institutions, and expanded opportunity for future generations. Across Michigan, women serve as teachers, as principals, as support staff, as researchers, and community leaders who work every day to support students and families. Their leadership continues to move our schools and our society forward. I would also like to recognize an extraordinary student achievement that I just happened to cross upon. A friend had posted it that doesn't even live in the state, but a young man by the name of Miles Dantzler, a third grade student at Bates Academy in Detroit, was recently inducted into Mensa, the International High IQ Society, whose membership includes individuals scoring in the top 2% on standardized intelligence tests. Achievements like this remind us of the tremendous talents that we have in our Michigan classrooms. And I would hope maybe we can have Miles to join us at a future board meeting so we can recognize his accomplishments and really just hear about his journey. And, as we hear again from students like Alex and like Miles, again, that's encouraging. Um, and I also, while on this topic, look forward to um, the May conversation on students with disabilities and appreciate always what our friends at the Autism Alliance bring to us, and that we look forward to saying more about students with disabilities and our work there. Um, Finally, I really want to address a matter that has generated some public attention. We know that there was a board member who recently sent a letter inviting the U.S. Department of Justice to intervene in Michigan education policy and circulated that letter and the resolution to local school districts. That correspondence does not represent the views of the State Board of Education, nor was it discussed or authorized by this body. Sending individual correspondence to local districts in a manner that suggests it reflects official board action risks creating confusion, misrepresenting Michigan education policy. Local school boards deserve clear and accurate guidance, and that guidance should come through official actions of the State Board of Education or the Michigan Department of Education, not individual board members acting alone. As we know, policy disagreements should be addressed through the democratic processes of this body and through the framework of the Michigan law. I do want to also raise, and I would have raised it earlier, the misinterpretation that we put forward guidance that encourages or is putting forward guidance to the field to teach gender identity or gender ideology. That you can't teach gender or gender identity. What we've talked about and discussed at this table is terminology that helps us to better discuss with students in a more conducive and safer environment terms that they're hearing and are being exposed to. So I close with saying again that it is our responsibility to remain focused on what matters most, strengthening public education and supporting the students, educators, and families who rely on our leadership. And I will end there.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Next, we'll move on to my report of the state's superintendent. We have a PowerPoint up. You'll get used to these PowerPoints that I do every month. It's updates. Like to be visual. I like the pictures with the signs. So, here we go. Okay. State of the state address. I love that picture there, Senator Bullock, and you all there. My wife said she loved it too. Thanks for the partnership. Emma Young's here from the governor's office, the positive collaboration working with her, Ms. Richard, the governor, and that first part of her speech was all focused on literacy and education. I think we've been talking to Republicans and Democrats in the legislature, and the legislators, I feel bipartisan support for a lot of the training and literacy initiatives, especially with letters training, so that's very positive. But that was my first time there, and it was great to be involved with that, and I thank the board members for your leadership there. This next picture was a great idea they had, Emma Young and Michelle Richard, and we got to hear and meet from educators from across the state of Michigan, someone for the UP and all over, and Dr. Carnell was there, and Alice Shrewsbury as well was with us. And so, they told us stories of, challenges they were facing and positive stories. We had a couple that got very emotional, including how positive of an impact the letters training was on their students, that it really works. So it was really positive, again, hearing from the field. I got to thank, between Allison, Dan Centers and my team, and then Karen, she's a master with my calendar and schedule. That's how I'm able to get to these places. So they're helping to onboard me. It's amazing how many requests I have, but these requests are very important. We need to meet with the people and hear from them, and that way we can make improvements and do it in a very collaborative manner. So I really appreciated that opportunity to speak before those educators. Okay, you know me with hockey, right? So this was a younger me. It was actually, I met Bobby Orr when I had finished playing junior hockey, but my brother was in an all-star game. My brother did get drafted in the NHL, by the way. He's a lot taller than me, but a lot younger. I still say I'll beat him on the ice, but you don't win by being good. Sacrifice and hard work. That's what we all stand for. That's why I'm out there. That's why we're all here. That's why board members drive from all over the state to come to meet, and we're all here about the hard work. Results. We saw results today. We need results, not just style. It's results from Bobby Orr, and it doesn't mean we can't improve. We still have room to improve in just developing better people. The number one goal. We had presentations on our teacher certification and how we're growing your own. So these are things, I take a lot from hockey, and I like to use those analogies, but it is part of who I am. Very excited when I went up. Bob Wheaton went with me. Him and his team have been great as well. And we met with Kelly Siciliana Carter, who developed a protocol for gathering feedback from the field. Really important for me, coming from a larger urban district, to get into small rural and have an understanding of what's going on. Someone said, well, what was your favorite thing so far? It's being in schools, and especially going up to the Skoda area and meeting with everyone. We went to 2 different school districts, learned the challenges of, some students that have an hour-and-a-half bus ride in the morning and after, issues on school meals, and we're going to talk about that, and we appreciate, the governor's budget coming out with that, and MD has come out with that as well. And look at this. This is there's a statue up in Escoda, and this was Superintendent Moore presented. We had an issue because the Thursday we had to cancel because they were canceling school, so I got up there later, and I was able to meet with Region 2 superintendents, and they had a Paul Bunyan. It's a famous statue they have up there, and they put him obviously on the hockey, and that's what they presented to me. So that was pretty cool, and thank you, Bob, for going with us on that visit. Miss Evans and Superintendent Kinzer, we went Steele Elementary here in the local area. So I didn't. So yeah, I'm going off of this one. Whoops.
I didn't see any.
You know what? I was going off of a computer. I wasn't coordinated. Okay, I got to back up. There's the Paul Bunyan. My bad. All right, I'm gonna go off. I'm just gonna look off of that so I know it's coordinated. So this was Steele Elementary, and Dr. Robinson went with us, and it was just great to hear the students. And we read to the students. We listened to the students. Okay, when I'm doing my listening tour, students are part of that, whether they're high school or elementary. And I got to tell you, I was so impressed with some of the students. There were 2 students that had a detailed list to tell me as to why they feel we need to make improvements in some of the state M-STEP testing. So we took the notes, we're gonna bring it back, and we're gonna listen to those students. And Allison, you know what I'm talking about. Region 6 superintendent meeting, that was in DeWitt. And again, that was Superintendent Kinzer that organized that. And so just wanna get out there. Talk to people, hear from them, get in the field. I think it's very important, again, gathering information and developing alliances, and just to hear, areas that department has strengths and areas that we can improve and partner more. So just thinking those are very important. Okay, this is something, the listening tour will continue. Went to Mason. We're going to Waterford on Friday. And part of that is a press conference jointly with MyLeap regarding the budget and letters training and curriculum materials, because Waterford, if you recall, they came before us and they had implemented a full level of training. And we're going to Detroit. And then I'm just going to play this because I'm going to the UP for a whole week at the end of April. And by the way, they did make it clear to me that it's still winter there. So it is not, but I'm actually more excited now that I saw this video.
Michigan is a hockey state. Across both peninsulas, the game is played everywhere, at the highest level, in community rinks, and outdoors whenever the weather will allow. Playing on a pond, this might be its purest form. It's hockey in the elements, played on natural ice right on the shore of St. Agnes. Weeks before the tournament begins, the work starts. 18 rinks, plowed, flooded, and resurfaced, prepared to give the teams the best sheet of ice nature can provide.
So Michigan citizen, Mr. Stewart, sent me that, and I was like, it's just a cool thing, but the best sheet of ice. That's what we have to do for our students. Give them the best sheet of ice so they can achieve and succeed. And now I think next year when I do the UP visit, I'll have to go earlier. Maybe I can enroll in one of those games up there when I make it up to the UP. Again, reaching out, Don Watruba, MASB. MASB is very big support. When I was in the local, the School Board Association provided a lot of support for local boards. And so I was able to get on his podcast. And he did say, I think it was my third time, and he said I may have like the top number of, I was on in my role in Dearborn and MASA president. But I told him I want to go back there. And anyway, it was very positive with MASB. This is the National Superintendent Conference. Dr. Carnell and I went. There was a lot of learning there, AI, student voice, different federal rules and things that were going on. And so it's just really important that we're out there, on a national level to know best practices. Again, we talk about collaboration with MyLeap, Goal 1 in the Top 10 plan. And so we have formed joint meetings that we're going to have with leadership here and leadership at MyLeap to collaborate and to ensure that our students are successful. March is Reading Month. I think board members are involved, and we appreciate that as well. There's resources, the team here, the literacy team, they told us the number, and actually MyLeap signed up as well, but I believe like over 170, I think, that signed up. I'm nodding here, I couldn't remember exact, but it was like doubled since the year before, so that's great. We've got more going out there, and they have told me, Bob, Mr. Wheaton has those students first signed. I know Dr. Pritchett, we saw that you had it when you went out to read. We have it right here, and we have Dr. Robinson, so we asked them to promote the message. And the students do love getting in those photos and promoting, and when they say, oh my gosh, it's gonna go all over the state of Michigan, they get so excited, so. Students at the Capitol, I want to thank Olivia Ponte. We made a quick visit in, and this is the civics group. We couldn't stay long because we were going to meet with Representative Kolazar, but it was great to see that. And they actually sent me away with different books for reading, for March's reading book on civics and education. So that was a very positive experience every time we see, the students involved. Again, I've been meeting with Republicans and Democrats. I've been meeting with legislators to form alliances for our legislative priorities. Like I said, the literacy, everyone seems to be on board. In fact, tomorrow they're going to have me testify on a committee relative to the letters training and how important it is in the House. So we're excited to be, working in positive collaboration. This is our intermediate school district event that Alice Shrewsbury and I went to last week. And Dan Centers goes to me, so they rotate who goes, they take notes. But anyway, very positive. They gave me a long time to present as well. We had conversations afterwards. This was in East Lansing. They had their spring annual, and I didn't get in the way of some of them were going to the Michigan State basketball game that night. I made sure I wasn't going to get in the way of that. We know we have two Michigan teams that are doing very well, but anyways, as we go into the tournament, very positive, a lot of, side talk and dialogue. And Dr. Severson, I appreciate the partnership there as we work together to put students first. This is, so prioritizing special education. Abby Seifer, she invited me, I made it work. Mr. Centers went with me, talking about how we can collaborate there. Senator Bayer, we had some nice conversations as well, again, in collaboration. So appreciate the collaboration with the special education group in Mace. So March is also, and thank you, Dr. Pugh, for recognizing Female History Month and Women's History Month, excuse me, but it's also, you know, Top 10 Plan, Nutrition Month as well. We have that in the recommended budget coming from the governor. We know it's very important. It was in our legislative priorities. We need to make sure that we're feeding students. Those are some of the challenges I heard up in Oscoda too about the meals program and making sure kids are fed when they come to school in some of those rural districts, that the schools are really the center hub. And in some cases, what we were hearing too is just for medical services, that the schools are taking on these wraparound services. So Ms. Lipton, to your point of these community and school programs that we need to look at. So here's positive. We already talked about it earlier, so I won't go into any more, but our graduation rate, we had a presentation, so we're very proud of that, working together. Office of Curriculum Instruction was created. I honestly can't take credit for this. The wheels were in motion prior to me coming. Dr. Carnell, thank you for your leadership to make this happen, and everyone on your team to provide support to those in the field. And here are some key priorities that they are working on. We just saw today, you know, obviously literacy, the dyslexia law, very critical, the work going on. I think we have a tremendous amount of momentum as everyone's talking about it. You know, between the governor's office, the legislature, all of you, we all know we need to get behind it, and we need to do it for the sake of our students. This was a positive study that came out on a national publication, and this was, I know Mr. McKinley, you talk about AI and other things, which I'm a big proponent. We want some funding as well for policy and development to provide guidelines, but they were actually recognizing Michigan as being ahead when they looked at the different aspects with flexibility for seat time requirements, empowering local districts, publishing graduate profiles, and launching competency-based education. We have talked about in our legislative priorities, flexibility for 11th and 12th graders. I know Michigan Virtual University has been doing some work on AI in other areas, and we have some team members that are gonna go to MASA session on AI development as well. So we know we need to continue to embrace it and make sure it's done properly and safely, but it is something that's very important. And I like your, Mr. Boffman from Michigan Virtual talks about too, how it can close that gap, students from underserved populations. So I know I've heard you say that too, Mr. McMillan, so it's very important. And just upcoming meetings. We got a lot coming on, thanks to Karen again, guarding that schedule and the great team here at MDE and making sure we get the ball rolling every day, helping me with my onboarding. But now I'm 3 months. The more I'm here longer, I'm learning more. I'm remembering some of those acronyms and, you know, just really excited to work with all of you, you know, in positive collaboration for the sake of our students. And we've got that legislative lunch coming up next week. Excited about that as well. So appreciate the time to be able to present my update, Students First. And you probably see more of those backgrounds and PowerPoints and things coming with the Students First message. Thank you. Okay. All right, next we have the state and federal legislative update. We'll hear from Mr. Bob Wheaton, Director of the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, and Ms. Olivia Ponte, Legislative Liaison, Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, who will provide the state and federal legislative update. And I appreciate, you know, Ms. Ponte bringing me everywhere. We've had many meetings with legislators, and, you know, more meetings are coming up, and so appreciate that.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Maleko. Dr. Maleko, I'll be happy to go to the UP with you next year to watch you play hockey.
Oh.
Nice. I'll turn it over to Olivia now.
All right. I'm going to hold you to it, Bob.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, board. So it's been a busy couple weeks for the legislature. I think gearing up before the legislative spring break takes place at the end of this month. So last week we had several committees. We had the Committee on Elections and Election Integrity. They took up a bill from Rep. Kelly that would prohibit the use of school aid funds for special elections, meaning for elections regarding passing a bond and things like that. That was reported to the floor, so that now sits on the House floor. Passed on the House floor last week was the bill that would require the state board to receive legislative approval before revising any recommended Model Core academic standards. That was passed along party lines, so that will now sit in the Senate. And then Senate Bill 492, this is a bill that would provide guidelines for unenrolling students from a district to go to a different district, and that one passed unanimously. The Committee on Education and Workforce also heard testimony on a bill, 4477. This bill would require instruction on water safety for students in grades K through 12. So that one wasn't reported out of committee, just testimony only on that one. And then this week, again, very busy. Just this morning, Diane Kelly-Rosansky, who you've seen a lot today, and myself testified in the House Appropriations Subcommittee on School Aid and MDE. There were some superintendents speaking to a financial penalty relating to the certification of teachers in the appropriate classroom. And this was something that MDE recognized as a problem as well. We included it in our legislative priority letter in January, so it was nice to be able to kind of back them up as well during that committee hearing. The Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Pre-K-12 met today as well, talked more about the weighted funding model and the executive budget recommendation that you'll hear Diane and I talk about pretty soon when we give more information on that. The House Committee on Education and Workforce is meeting tomorrow. We'll go over some programming on FFA and other possible literacy strategies. And then Thursday, Diane and I will be back at it doing testimony in the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on MDE, testifying on the executive budget recommendation for the department budget, the MDE budget. And I think that just about rounds it out for this week. Happy to take any questions on any of that. Right. Just a little busy.
Ms. Lipton?
Yes, thank you for that. I just have a question in terms of HB 5032. So it limits costs associated with the election in terms of having to be paid for with private donations. So my question is the same parity for money being spent in opposition to a millage also going to be limited to private donations?
The bill only speaks to what districts can spend, so there is no counterpart for.
So it's actually pretty uneven because we know, based on Citizens United, that dark money could come in at any time. So in a sense, it's pretty uneven.
Yeah, the bill only speaks to what a school district can spend.
As opposed to what potential dark money can come in opposing. Thank you.
So this would be, because obviously I've dealt with this at the local level, this is informational campaign money it would limit. So not advocacy, because advocacy, as districts, you can only be involved as your citizen. You can't be an official superintendent or teacher or anybody advocating. So this would be the informational that is spent. Some of it is also for, like, my understanding, Olivia, and you can correct me, is goes into, like, you know, designing and doing studies as to what buildings and things that you might determine which ones are aging, which ones have infrastructure problems that you may need to look at. So you kind of need those data sets in order to make a decision when you're actually looking at those. I was just in the process prior to leaving Dearborn, they're looking at one. So we had done a lot of the steps, but you need data in order to make those decisions. So my understanding is it will limit those things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Dr. Pugh?
I have a question about Tim Kelly's bill related to the letters training. Have we heard any pushback from that bill?
Slightly. I mean, it's relatively new. It was just introduced last week. So we're still reviewing as a department. I think there is a little bit of pushback in the sense of, you know, academic freedom and constitutionality related to educator prep programs or EPPs. but we haven't fully thought through the implications of that. We're still reviewing.
Okay, so, and are we in support of, so we're reviewing, we haven't expressed.
We haven't taken a
Oh,
position.
a position, okay. Thanks.
All right, anybody else? I mean, we do feel optimistic though with letters and training and all that, so we just gotta work through the nuances, I think, but,
Okay.
yeah. So, because that, and that comes to, okay, so if we have the funding, for example, to train all the current teachers in the field, then how do you do moving forward? So if you can get some of that into teacher preparation programs, then you take care of that aspect as well.
yeah.
So. Okay, thank you. And I think Olivia's staying there because I'm gonna have Dr. Gozinski to come up and they're gonna provide a update on the executive budget recommendations.
All
Welcome.
right, thank you. So I am just going to go ahead and get started here. We got the fiscal year 27 budget recommendation from the executive this month, well, last month, and just going to share an update on that. Just a reminder, this is the first step in the process. Still looking forward to the Senate and House subcommittee recommendations as well. So starting out, the per pupil allocation, the foundation allowance, we see a 2.5% increase for traditional LEAs and PSAs, and then 20% of the foundation would be recommended for cyber charters. That would be an 18% overall decrease to the per pupil there. The big topic that we're hearing a lot about in committees the past couple weeks is the new weighted funding model proposed by the executive. And in plain language, I'll try to kind of break this down. Basically, for two categoricals, English learners and at-risk students or economically disadvantaged students, they would get more funding. They would generate more funding. So, for example, on English learners, based on a WIDA score, so that helps identify where their English proficiency is, they would get somewhere between 2 and 17% more than a student who is not an English learner. And then the intent would be to increase that percentage every year until you're getting to somewhere between 35 and 75%. So starting with goal 8, providing adequate and equitable school funding. We see level funding for partnership districts, a 6.1% increase for our rural and isolated districts, level funding for the transportation fund, and then transportation reimbursement, I should say, and a 6% increase for at-risk, which you'll notice used to be 31A, the separate categorical. Under this proposal, it is rolled into the foundation allowance, but that is the amount that would be earmarked for that purpose. And then to the point of the transportation fund reimbursement, that $125 million is taken from the transportation fund, and there is no new deposit put in. So we would have to revisit this next year.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What?
Yes. So there is a separate transportation fund. So that $125 million was taken from that fund, meaning there would not be enough funding next year, fiscal year 28, to appropriate another $125 million. Yes, sorry.
Was it reallocated somewhere else, or they just didn't fund?
So they put money into the transportation fund last year. So now they're taking it from that fund and they're not backfilling it.
They took it back and then putting it somewhere else?
No, they're using it for transportation reimbursement. They're taking it from the transportation fund and they're using it on transportation reimbursement.
In a different, like in a general form of fund, or how are they removed it from a specific fund, right? Specific transportation fund.
Yes.
Moved it over here. What does that encompass in transportation versus what the specific fund is?
Oh, the fund is like a bank account. It's like your, oh, got it. So it wasn't doing anything.
Right, no, so the, excuse me, the separate transportation fund, each year for the last couple of years, we've been putting additional money into that. And then the money comes from that for us to use for transportation reimbursements under 22L. So that's the reimbursements for the general student transportation, about 25%. Correct. That's it. Yes.
Thank you. All right, so, next is the special ed, millage equalization. If this looks familiar, it's because it was proposed in the last two executive budget recommendations, a 20% increase for this line item to cover a revised formula that would better equalize millages. Bilingual education or English learners, this is along with the 31A at-risk number, would be tied to the foundation allowance rather than that separate Section 41 categorical, but we do see a 6% increase to that line item. And then 51E, the foundation allowance for students with disabilities, small increase on that one as well. New this year is Section 51I. This is the intent to implement a weighted special education funding model in fiscal year 28, which would be next year. Moving on to goal 2, improving early literacy achievement. We saw a 20% increase to the amount that would be allocated for ISD literacy coaches. We saw a $50 million investment over 5 years for letters training, $100 million over 2 years in more funding for high quality early literacy materials in 35M. And then 35O is literacy essentials. So currently that is funded, but just under a different name. It's under 35M. So they just pulled it out. So it looks like a new section, but it's literacy essentials. And then 35P is also a new section. It would be $100 million for high impact tutoring. Moving on to goal 3, improving the health, safety, and wellness of all learners. Free meals for all, Michigan School Meals, was funded with $200 million of recurring funding, and 31N for mental health grants, level funded. It's also important to note that the governor also called for the codification of the meals program in the revised school code, which would mean that it would be there in perpetuity and not based on the budget language. Lastly, in goal 3, 31A, the school-based health centers, that remains in 31A, which rather than the full at-risk pot, this is for those health centers. So that is level funded at $33 million. Same with the hearing, vision, and dental screenings. And then lastly, 31AA was included. It would have $300 million. It would be only school aid funds, so no non-pubs in this one, and the waiver language would remain. And I'll pass it over to Diane.
Thank you, Olivia. Moving on to goal 7, which is increasing the number of certified teachers in areas of shortage. You will see 27A, which is My Future Educator Fellowship, proposed to be funded at $25 million again. Grow Your Own under 27B, $60 million, and My Future Educator Student Stipends under 27C, $50 million. The note around boilerplate for both 27A and 27C is that the boilerplate language now says that those programs must be aligned to the science of reading. Under CTE, we see a 6% increase for CTE programming as well as middle college programs. Our one-time funding for the incentive payment and pathways to success is not proposed to continue in FY27, but those were the pathways to success was a 5-year appropriation in FY26. Dual enrollment incentives, this is a new section, section 21B, is proposed to be $20 million for reimbursement to districts in opportunity index bands of 4, 5, or 6. Remember, those are the opportunity index bands with the highest number of students in need, in financial need. And then our AP line item is proposed to be a 54% decrease. Adult education is proposed to be restored to FY25 levels, which is 40.5 million. And new-ish section 23H, is around mathematics pathways. We also have 99S around MySTEM network regions and FIRST robotics under 99H. Oh, no, one more. One more piece for the State School Aid Act, section 164M. If you remember, we had 164K in FY26. There were 5 different things that districts had to do, or there would be state aid penalties if the districts didn't follow those 5 things. Now, it is section 160, it proposed to be section 164M, which means that districts must comply with the literacy law. They must implement a multi-tiered systems of support, use a weighted funding to support student needs, and communicate that information out to families. And MDE must monitor districts for compliance and withhold monthly state aid payments for non-compliance. Moving on to the MDE budget, the only real item of note in the proposed MDE budget is 3 FTEs and $380,000 for our Office of Nutrition Services. This is to support the Michigan School Meals Program. Currently, that office is 100% federally funded, and our federal partners are indicating that there must be state investment to support the state program. It's an auditing risk, and so as a result, the governor has proposed to help right-size that in her budget proposal. So with that, we'll hand it back to Dr. Maleko. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Dr. Pugh?
Under Goal 8, for the 21H and the 22D funds, I hadn't noticed the difference between the partnership districts and the rural and isolated, and just have questions about that. It's on page 4. It's the second goal, the second slide. Any thoughts there on the discrepancy between the funding? Do we have rural districts that are a part of the partnership districts? And then our partnership districts have increased, right? They're increasing. So if you could just speak to that budget item.
Yeah, so our number of partnerships districts has increased. The level funding that you see here does not include the additional $12 million per year that we received for the last 3 years to support the work of the partnership districts. Now, are there rural and isolated districts who are also a part of the partnership districts? I need to double check with our partnership district office or Dr. Carnell. She believes there is one.
Okay, and so there's many more rural and isolated districts than partnership districts?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, let me double check. Your question was there's more rural and isolated than there are partnerships?
Say more. I guess needs, but you kind of explained it. You said that there's other funds that are not reflected in this budget.
That were not proposed to continue.
Okay.
They're 2 separate categories for districts. They're really, the rural and isolated is meant to address the needs of those who are literally rural and isolated, whereas the partnership district money is really meant to support those who need those additional student supports to help get the students successful.
So then we see those partnership district needs scattered elsewhere being addressed. Do you get what my question's not clear? That's a huge difference in allocated or proposed funds. The partnership districts have great needs, transportation needs. Their isolation needs are growing, and we have seen an increase in the number of partnership districts. So I'm just asking, are there any concerns there? I mean, I don't like to compare.
Yes.
Because the needs of the rural community are there, right? But obviously, the partnership districts have needs, and that $6 million, that's a huge gap.
So what you'll notice at the bottom is a note that the PFC was not included. PFC stands for Proposals for Change. That was one of the proposals that the department had submitted, asking for that $12 million, that additional $12 million to continue, so that we can continue to support those districts, those buildings who are part of our partnership model, in the ways that we have been. This is, again, as Olivia had stated earlier, this is just the first step in budget negotiations. This is the governor's proposal. We support the governor's proposal. We'll have to see what happens with the Senate and House version.
Right, but I'm also looking at fiscal year '26. I guess I hadn't noticed that this is how it was last fiscal year, so, or last fiscal.
Funding without the additional 12 million one time, correct?
Gotcha, okay. And then looking at slide 13, going back to the 54% decrease, we've been really excited about our advancements in AP, IB, and so I'm just wondering, do we feel that those advancements will continue, or given these cuts?
No, absolutely. Part of the reason that the funding was needed last year was because we have so much more buy-in from students. I mean, we send the letter telling students that they would be a good candidate to take an AP test. So we're absolutely going to advocate for the full funding of that to continue on those gains, and we've already flagged that.
Okay, thank you.
There's also a committee they're working on too, I know with MyLeap, about just with early college programs and that, and superintendents bring it up to us about how these are getting funded. But obviously there's value in that. We see the data and the support, and local superintendents then try to they make it work with the foundation allotment they get for the 5-year program. But definitely we could use more funding in promoting it. So.
Question.
Oh, Ms. Schneider, go ahead.
Just curious, are charter schools financially incentivized for dual enrollment as well? Do they do that?
So currently, no district is financially incentivized to participate in dual enrollment. I would have to double check, but I would say I'm 90% sure that charter schools are included in 21B, but I'll confirm that.
Okay. What would you attribute that decrease in AP/IB CLEP?
I would, if I had my best guess, I would attribute it just to the mechanics of the budget, that they took out all of the one-time funding. And that additional funding from last year, from fiscal year '26 that we saw, was one-time funding. So the only ongoing bucket that was left in that section was 1.2 million. I don't think it's attributed to anything other than that, but I do think it's something that needs to be, that we need to draw attention to.
Okay.
Anyone else? Oh, Senator Bullock.
It's not. We talked about it. Yes. Oh. Microphone police. The MPs came. That was cute. The meals, school meals becoming permanent. What's the plan on how we get that done? Or does she have it yet? Or funding it is one thing, but how do we put it in the statute?
Yeah, so that would have to be a policy bill, and it would have to go through all the legislative committees, but there are policy bills that have been introduced by Senator Polhinky that, they had a hearing last year, and we testified in support of those bills. They obviously didn't make it across the finish line, but now that there's a renewed interest, we're hopeful this year.
Yeah. Because we want to get it done so that we got to worry about it. So.
Exactly.
got some trickery going on. May I turn my microphone on?
Ms. Evans, is that allowed? Okay. All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause and bow. Is there any comments, next item agenda, comments by state board members? Ms. Tilley and then Mr. McMillan.
Wait, they can.
Oh,
Thank
okay. Mr. McMillan, go ahead.
Oh, just continuing on what the discussion this morning that regarding the resolution that was proposed, I just wanted to clarify that, you know, when events happen like the U.S. Supreme Court making a ruling last week, and it impacts what we have or what this board has approved or affirmed or allowed to happen, and now that those actions would be unconstitutional or are unconstitutional, then I think it is something that would be appropriate. It's not, you know, rehashing things from the past. This is new. This is something that, you know, I watched those videos when they weren't behind a password wall. And it was explicitly teaching, instructing teachers how to do exactly what is now unconstitutional. It was explicitly saying, when there's a parent-teacher conference, here's how you make sure you deceive the parents. They didn't say how to deceive, but they said that the parents don't find out. And here is how you use the software to make sure that you put the name that will deceive the parents. And so, you know, and they didn't say deceive, they said so the parents won't know when a report card goes home or when other information goes home from the school. So this is exactly what was being addressed by the U.S. Supreme Court. What they have said is unconstitutional. So yes, I mean, since we were giving that instruction, MDE was, it's very clear that it's a topic that we should take up. Now, I understand there may be some here that belong to a party that the left wing, a very small minority of bullies, will not allow you to vocalize reasonable, caring, views and defend parents' rights. You would be you would be excluded from elected office in the future because of those bullies that insist that you defend these kids who have mental health issues, and and to be deceptive to parents. And if you even speak up for parents' rights or something reasonable like making sure parents would understand and know that Bobby is being called Susie at school, that, you can kiss future elections goodbye. So I understand that. I just wish that you would put that aside and actually do what's right. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Lipton, or then Ms. Tilley, did you still want it? Okay, we'll go to Ms. Lipton and then Dr. Pritchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say this earlier, but I wanted to just double check and make sure that I was correct. I think it's important to give the full story, and there has been some reference to January 2026 Supreme Court opinion, known colloquially as the Mirabelli decision. I have read that decision, and I would like to clarify that that is a very specific kind of decision that we attorneys reference as being on the emergency docket, which is also colloquially known as the shadow docket, for a reason. The shadow docket opinions are very, very specific. They are not intended to make broad-based policy decisions, and to term that opinion as such is misleading at best and dishonest at worst. So again, as the only attorney at this table, I would like to clarify that to state in a resolution and in comments that the Mirabelli decision renders anything other than the specific facts upon which that case was decided as unconstitutional is legally incorrect. It is a decision that was rendered on the shadow docket. Thank you.
And I get Dr. Pritchett and then Mr. Senator Bullock, you're next.
Thank you. Two quick dates, which I think you're all aware of. March 19, legislative luncheon. It sounds as though we've got quite a few people coming. It's at Heritage Hall, and I know Liz will be sending out correspondence on that. April 9 is the next legislative committee meeting via Zoom or Teams or whatever we are using. The other thing I'd like to comment on, I think we're all aware of the fact that there was a tragic weather situation here in Michigan several days ago, and 4 people lost their lives to tornadoes. As I was reading about that, I was struck by the fact that the community came together and they went to the local high school, which was still standing, thankfully. And that is where they are working through all of the emergency efforts. Food's being delivered. People are there to help provide housing for individuals who lost housing, et cetera. And it struck me again about how important it is that we keep in mind that our public schools are the core of our communities. That's where people look to in situations like this in order to bring the community together. I firmly believe that our community schools, all of our schools, public schools, are there to partner with our parents. We're in this together. And so when comments are made about schools not following through and giving information to our parents about curriculum issues or any issues that are going on at their schools, I find that hard to believe, because my experience has been that public school administrators, our public charter school administrators want to work with parents in partnership. Because it is for the betterment of all of our students. So I say that, and I thank Union City High School for opening their doors for individuals who needed help this past week.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Senator Bullock.
Well, I look forward to this next year working with you, but it would have provided way much more comic relief had I been able to translate Sister Lipton's response in a manner. I'm not a lawyer, so I just want to try to translate it to regular people terms. So what you said, Member Lipton, is that the Supreme Court did not have an opinion. They ruled on one specific thing for the state of California, right? And with that, that ban was done in an emergency fashion. So it's held in court for whatever legal processes are still going, right? I'm just trying to do the translation. So right now we have nothing but a hold on that specific decision about that specific thing in that state. So we don't have any unconstitutional violations. So Member Lipton saying that they're being disingenuous by keep saying it. And if you just because you keep saying it doesn't make it true. Feelings aren't facts. Let's roll. Tiffany?
Thank you. I want to say happy Women's History Month to all of the women, and especially to the women who are in this room and that serve in the department that are making history. I pay homage to all of you, and I appreciate being surrounded by such greatness. I also want to say March is reading month, and I got a chance yesterday to make new friends. A rambunctious group of first and second graders, and they had a lot of questions and comments. I got a chance to read a few books to them, and they were very talkative at different points when I allowed space, and I wanted to allow space to engage with them. And so we had a great time. I want to thank MDE for arranging it. I want to thank Principal Perry and their teacher, Miss Tinsley at David Ellis Academy for having me. Recently, we got a chance to do the MTOY interviews, and they went wonderfully. I want to thank MDE staff. Staff did a great job again this year. Jen for her leadership and making sure that everything ran smoothly. And I want to thank Pam Harlan and the MEMIC Foundation for their sponsorship and support of the program and making sure that educators' voices are at the table. And I want to thank the panelists for their voices. We have a dynamic group every year, and voices from union leadership who represents educators. Educators' voices are at the table. And the last couple of years, we've had Native American leadership at the table. And again, it's just an amazing group to work with every year. I also want to thank the teachers that participate and that serve our students every day. Now I want to speak about something that should concern everyone who cares about public education in Michigan. The recent targeting of Detroit Public Schools Community District, Godfrey Lee Public Schools, and Lansing School District by the United States Department of Justice raises serious questions. Michigan has more than 800 school districts serving children across our state, yet somehow these 3 districts were singled out. Why these districts? Why these communities? Why these students? I question both the validity and the origin of the investigation. When we look closer, we also see clear demographic similarities. DPSCD has approximately 80% African American students. Godfrey Lee Public Schools has approximately 80% Hispanic students. And the Lansing School District has approximately 80% minority students. These districts serve diverse student populations with large numbers of students of color, immigrant families, and students from economically disadvantaged households. They are districts where educators work every day to support children who often face greater social and economic barriers, yet still deserve the same opportunity to succeed as any child in this country. That reality makes the targeting of these particular districts even more troubling. The Michigan State Board of Education provides guidance to school districts that choose to offer sex education programs. These programs are opt-in and governed by Michigan law and local school boards. The role of the state board is simply to ensure that districts have clear guidance so they can operate responsibly and in compliance with the law. But no school district replaces the role of parents. The values, morals, and beliefs that children carry with them begin at home. Educators support learning, they support safety, they support the well-being of students, but they do not and cannot override the values instilled by families. When districts serving some of our most diverse and economically challenged communities are singled out in this way, it raises serious questions about fairness and intent. Our teachers, administrators, and school boards deserve partnership, not intimidation. They deserve collaboration, not political theater, And most importantly, the students in these districts deserve to know that the adults responsible for their education will stand up for them. Today, I stand with Detroit Public Schools Community District, Godfrey Lee Public Schools, and Lansing School District, because supporting our schools means supporting the students, families, and educators who make them strong. And in Michigan, we should always stand on the side of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Ms. Schneider?
Yeah. I'm going to respond to a few things. First, the concept of being disingenuous. During COVID, I was the only nurse at the table, but you did not hear me say, I'm the only healthcare professional here, and so therefore what I have to say is the final say. But I did take my expertise to the table and described the concept of mask mandates not making sense because of the way that viruses in their aerosolized nature actually transmit even in negative isolation rooms with N95 tested and fitted masks, right? So I came to the table with information, put the information out there, and asked that we consider policy that was rooted in that information. But from a genuine standpoint, I never wanted to make anybody feel like I am the only healthcare provider here, and so I know all. I think the same thing applies to this Supreme Court ruling. While it is a shadow docket, right, it is a nationwide signal, it's not a final rule, it does create persuasive precedent. There are related cases still pending, including Foote v. Ludlow and Littlejohn v. Leon. That's going to happen. Those are coming. It's very clear that states with parental notification laws are strengthened when we confuse our laws with whether or not parental notification needs to happen, which is what we did with those health education guidelines / standards. Again, what are they? We don't know which parts are what. Anyhow, that's going to be fleshed out. So states that have parental notification laws that are strong and genuine will be protected. States with secrecy policies will face pressure. So regardless of where it's at right now, that's where it's at. So the video that Tom is referring to that is password protected right now, I screen recorded at that time in 2022.
Safe and supportive learning environments for LGBTQ plus students. When it comes to sharing names and pronouns, schools are not, students have first of all, students have privacy rights. Parents are not, schools don't have a legal obligation to tell parents that a student goes by a different name and pronouns than is their legal name.
I'll stop there. It's roughly 3 minutes of very clear education to teachers on how to withhold information from parents when their child is transitioning at school. The decision in California, again, right now, yes, in its stages, is still narrow. I get it, but it's coming. And as a state, we actually led what it looked like to say, hey, parents, we're not going to let you know what's going on with your kid while they're at school. That was in 2022. This decision was in reference to something that happened in California in 2024. It's not going anywhere. Whether we agree on it or not, at the end of the day, parents have a right to know the information about what their children are dealing with in school. End of story. That's the reality, and the Supreme Court has issued a preliminary ruling on it. So we can keep going on as if we don't care about that, or we can say, hey, we do in fact care about that. It's okay if we took a step and it wasn't the right step. And no school district is actually being targeted, to be completely honest with you. There's 3 school districts that the DOJ is investigating is not limited to parents from other school districts that are reaching out to us via email, all of us. I've had a parent reach out to us from Townline Elementary, that's in Kentwood. There's a case coming out of Taylor, Michigan, right? So this is 5 different school districts of all different backgrounds in which the DOJ is absolutely going to look into, and I hope they continue to look into what it looks like for our laws to be violated, the federal laws to be violated, and for this department to just bowl forward and say, I don't care about any other authority besides my own. This is a teacher training video that MDE put out in 2022. It needs to be retracted.
Dr. Pugh?
I do think that there should be some corrections. When that video came out, the question was around protecting students. It was not a blanket, this is what this is what educators should do. Educators have a responsibility to protect students if they feel that they are in harm. And that was speaking to those very rare occasions when that is the case. And I will also say is that Dr. Maleko opened the conversation up with expressing that he had reached out to the our AG's office and received clarification on the Supreme Court decision that you're speaking of. We're not just holding blanket conversation here without information, I should say.
Senator Bullock?
Just quick, just because there's an investigation doesn't presume guilt. Like, people get investigated all the time and it's unfounded.
Yeah.
There are many ways to get an investigation started. And a lot of times what we've done now in this society, in our era right now, we weaponize the judicial criminal system to do investigation for political propaganda. So let's be clear, just because there's an investigation doesn't mean that there's something founded. And until it is, then we quit making innuendos as if it's done. Same thing with a decision was made, but it's not constitutionally violated. We haven't done anything in violation. Well, you can say it's coming, and until it comes, then stop saying it.
So if I could just comment too, and I said this earlier, in talking to the superintendents, and the letter even says there was no determination. I do believe these districts got it targeted. I don't know the exact reason for it. We're going to support them. We're going to be in contact with them. And they've told me they have nothing to hide. They're very just concerned at the massive amount of information and time that's going to be taken to address these situations. So I appreciate the comments by everyone. I would also say, yes, I did, Dr. Pugh, talk to our Attorney General to make sure we're in compliance with rules, and it's been assured that it doesn't impact Michigan because we don't have a mandated policy that mandates districts to implement these areas like it may have happened in California. So just to reiterate that, what was said earlier this morning as well. Thank you. Ms. Schneider, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing. I have written a letter. I'll own it. I have no problem with owning it. I wrote the letter. Nikki Snyder wrote the letter to the DOJ to ask them to investigate MDE, not those school districts. Not even the school districts of the parents that have reached out to each one of us to ask us to do something about this, which are not those 3 school districts. I think MDE has led the corruption of this issue from the start. So I think an appropriate outcome would be the DOJ investigating the MDE.
Well, I just want to, as a comment, not aware of anything. We have people with integrity here. And from everything that I know, we're following all the regulations and rules, following the law and ensuring that we're just protecting all students. So.
I just played the teacher training for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
I need to, put a bow on this too. I mean, I find it, if we step back, I find it incredible that the Democrats on this board are saying, hey, we can still say that parents can be deceived by
One
teachers
said
and
that,
districts.
stop.
Hey, it's not unconstitutional yet. Well, I mean, I've talked to attorneys that have argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. They said that, yes, this indicates clearly to any judge that the court feels this is unconstitutional, deceiving parents, that is what happened with Mirabelli on March 2nd in their decision. And so you can split hairs in order to claim that they can still deceive parents, but that's what you guys want, and it's clear that's what you want, and you're trying to split hairs on that to make sure, oh, we still can for a while until this or that. No, the idea is you guys feel it's okay for schools and districts and teachers to deceive parents. By that video, exactly what it said, you won't condemn it, You won't make sure that it's not being shown. You won't make sure that teachers are told something different. And so, you know, I mean, when we step back, that is what is really being argued here. So, yeah, congratulations. You guys can still say that, that, you know, parents can be deceived. There we go.
Again, you're making innuendos that we are
No, this is
saying
clear.
something. What we're saying is there's rules, there's regulations, and you're about rules and regulations. And she's about rules and regulations. And she took it upon herself to step outside of this group and go to the DOJ. You have taken it upon yourself to keep throwing out words that are harmful to this entire unit.
You guys are harmful to kids.
I'm done.
Remind everyone to address the chair with their comments.
Well,
Thank you. That's
well,
it.
I'm just talking.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Done.
Ms. Tilley.
There was a terminology when I was growing up that was very popular, and it was coming out of the closet. There are many people that hid in the closet for a very long time because it was not safe to come out and let society know that they were a part of the LGBTQ community. And I just pulled up where I wanted to see, and there's a very specific reason why educators feel that they need to protect children and keep children safe that are a part of this community. I just pulled up, it says significant numbers of LGBTQ youth experience parental rejection, with studies showing 26% to 43% are kicked out of their home or run away due to familial conflict over their identity. Furthermore, roughly 32% to 34% of LGBTQ youth face physical, emotional, or sexual abuse from family members. So we do absolutely believe in parental rights. We also believe in the rights of our children to be protected, to be safe, to be respected, to be heard, to be valued. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Going to move on to the next item. And before we do, I just want to make a comment that last week was Employee Appreciation Week here at the department. I appreciate Kelly Siciliani Carter and team for putting together that protocol. It really helped me too, because on Tuesday we had what we call a safari, where we had to go to every office, including in this building and across in the library. And I am very competitive. I was done on Tuesday, but I also got lost, I'll be honest, at times. But getting lost got me into conversations with employees at MD. So thank you for doing that, and everyone that had a part. And you can see the appreciation, some of the banners that we posted. So, you know, I want to thank, again, the MD staff for the hard work they do. And looking forward, again, to work in positive collaboration with all board members, with all stakeholders, the governor, Emma Young, again, everyone here, you know, excited to do the work, coming back to, you know, why we're here. And I know it's students first, so we're going to put our behind the students and what we need to do. So thank you. All right, next item is the future meetings of the State Board of Education, Tuesday, April 14th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. There's a work session on Wednesday, May 20th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. We're still working on the details there. And Tuesday, June 9th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. Is there any topics that, if there's any topics that board members would like to recommend for future agenda items, please notify Ms. Evans or me directly. And I want to thank you, board members, presenters, everyone who participated in today's meeting. This concludes the State Board of Education meeting for March 12th, 2026. We stand adjourned at 4:04 p.m. Thank you.